Hey everyone, hope you're having a fantastic day. I got some good stuff here for you today. My name is Christian Sandoval. We're going to be talking about a little bit about gait and development throughout the different stages of life from early infancy throughout older adulthood. And we're just going to be talking about a little bit about the theories and principles behind gait and development, the different stages, as well as gait abnormalities, different physical and perceptual constraints that affect and influence gait development. And then we're going to talk a little bit about each stage in particular and how they differ. All right, so let's get started. All right, so we're going to talk about theories and principles to start and early childhood. In particular, a big theme with early childhood, but throughout all gait and development, obviously, is the central nervous system. So that's what we're going to be talking a lot about the sensory feedback, sensory stimuli that can affect and influence motor development throughout life. So a big thing is trial and error, just how every time they try and walk and fall and get back up every time and keep trying, it's just adding new more processing information just to help and eventually obtain and this organized movement pattern of walking, running, hopping, whatever it is as we get older. Big thing is involuntary and voluntary reflexes. So spontaneous movements, right? Spontaneous kicking, reaching. We know now that we can basically attribute it to normal adult walking or adult reaching. And then some voluntary reflexes are the labyrinthine riding reflex and the palmar grasp reflex, which are both assisted reflexes. Basically, the palmar kind of giving your finger your arm and having the baby kind of reach out and grab you. The labyrinthine riding reflex is kind of where the baby's head is stabilizing when you're kind of holding them, um, allowing them to place their feet and kind of create that stability for themselves. And then the visual, kinesthetic, and auditory is pretty self-explanatory. Just more working with the vestibular system and how visual and auditory stimulus can affect gait and development. And that will lead, with those things, that will lead to a development of postural control and stability over time as they get older. And then the biggest theme here too with early childhood is motor milestones. Motor milestones, we're going to be talking about the six major ones. Obviously, sitting without support, creeping, standing with assistance, walking with assistance, standing alone, and then walking alone. And this order is pretty consistent throughout, every child. Although everybody accomplishes it at different times. Not everyone's gonna at 12 months they're gonna be walking, right? So, and then lastly, here stability over mobility. Here stability is a big thing for early infancy with their gait, and obviously mobility is going to suffer in turn with that. So the basis of support is wide, specifically for both structural and stability reasons. We can see that the toddlers, as they spread their legs farther apart, it's going to help with the stabilization again, but just going to just reduce that mobility, right? So let's see, let's get going to childhood. And in childhood, we have a little bit more increase of pelvic rotation, increase of stride length. Obviously, we're getting older, right? We're getting bigger, longer legs. Opposition occurs here where arm and the contralateral leg, that movement is happening. So by age 4, all essential components of an advanced walker present, which I thought was interesting as I was learning that throughout this course. From standing at 6 years old, there's a coordination of upper lower body movement and just kind of organizing that movement pattern together. At 7 years old, through adolescence, we see a refinement of head stabilization. So, kind of makes sense as a bottom up approach here. As we get older and the different environmental constraints, task constraints that come up, we can see our head kind of stabilizing for the lack of structural balance from head down, as we see throughout as we develop. And then the big thing here is the task of childhood. So just learning how different frames of reference complement each other during movement. So in other words, just how sensory and perceptual info play a part in childhood development. And then in adulthood, a normal gait pattern makes up 60% of a stance phase, which is initial contact and loading response, a mid stance, and a terminal stance. And then the last 40% will be the swing phase, which is made up of a pre-swing, initial swing to a mid swing, and then the late mid swing to a terminal swing. And then let's see, we got the ecological perspective. So the ecological perspective that most physical therapists, other therapists in the field, doctors, different people believe with this is how most people develop. So it comes with two branches. One branch is concerned more with motor control and coordination, call it a dynamical systems approach. And then the other branch would be a perception approach. So it's more a perception action approach, right? And then we have an increase of control and performance of motor skills here. Obviously, more coordinated movements, more advanced movements as we develop. And then most likely we'll have proper pelvic torso rotation, increased knee hip flexion. And then what I mean here with an increased swing phase versus stance phase is compared to that of a child, mature gait, it's much more swing involved and less stance as compared to an immature gait, an early childhood, where it's a lot more prolonged, like a double support phase, where both legs are usually planted on the ground. And then finally, older adulthood, we have mainly just the change of individual constraints is what's going to affect their any type of development they have. They contributing of weight gain, any weight loss, right? Changes in strength or balance, disease, injury, they're all going to affect the way an older adult would have their gait. And then we have a decreased muscle mass, again, muscle coordination, flexibility, joint mobility. And then what I wrote here, modified gait to accommodate basically no matter whatever is going on in their lives, environmental factors, psychological factors, physical factors, structural constraints, all those, their gait will be modified to accommodate whatever issues, conditions, disorders an older adult person would have. All right, so now we're going to talk about a little bit about gait abnormalities. And for early childhood, pretty basic here, just wide base of support. Again, more of a prolonged double support phase. Postural abnormalities of head and trunk. As an early infant, they don't have the strength to kind of lift their heads. Their head's a little too heavy for them compared to their bodies. We have an absent of heel strike, high cadence. That can kind of be a reason of the absent heel strike. The high cadence, a lot of movement, a lot of steps, creates more of like a flat foot approach as they land instead of a heel strike. For childhood, it's a narrower base of support. There's more of an out toeing, so a lateral rotation of the hip, a lot more to deal with, again, stability. And then they have let's say a high guard to low guard, basically development, where their arms start up higher, and they kind of, as they develop, they end up bringing them lower and lower, and eventually starting to develop a more of a mature gait and doing arm swing and contralateral leg and all that. And then for adulthood, we have sensory motor impairments. So basically, at this point in your adulthood, we all have established, organized movement patterns that we've have made up and basically are programmed into our brains and into our bodies, and we act out through our gait and through our motor control because of those, out of those. So that's what I mean with sensory motor impairments that can contribute to some gait abnormalities. Orthopedic conditions such as arthritis, osteoporosis, musculoskeletal conditions and dysfunctions, all that will affect it. Excess weight, extrinsic factors like work, school, someone's driving a lot, those factors can all play. New hobby you pick up can all be a factor. Older adulthood, we have musculoskeletal abnormalities similar to just regular adulthood, just muscle function, so loss of muscle function, muscle strength, all that. Postural control, mental health will play a factor, obviously, and then the cardiovascular changes as well. All right, now we're going to be talking about the physical and perceptual constraints. And then for early childhood, we have the obvious physical constraints here would be, just a shorter limb length. Body development hasn't really happened yet, right? Muscle mass, strength, endurance, all that stuff hasn't been shaped or formed yet. So that's the basic constraints with them physically. Perceptually, extrinsic factors affecting body metabolism. And our textbook talks about catch-up growth, right? So, through infancy and, the diet modifications, not getting the right nutrients can affect the way they progress and develop in the world. And then less access to sensory stimuli, right? That's going to lead to inadequate central nervous system development here, which will prolong, any motor milestones that they may, be nearing or close reaching. So, and then the physical constraints for childhood, we have continued development of body systems, height, weight, physiological maturation. Here, dealing with puberty and the hormones that come with it, and how that will affect just basically any type of gait, any type of motor development. in general. And then for the perceptual constraint we have is environmental, rate limiters, school, gravity, activities, daily living. All those things will play a part. The self-esteem, big thing with kids, right? Just who they group with, who they're surrounded with, and the activities and the motor activities that they choose to do. And then for adulthood and older adulthood we have physical constraints, just trauma, injury, path of least resistance. Basically, what I mean by that is our bodies are so the muscular system, the most adaptable system in the body. So with that, the brain will always find a way to do a movement, to make an organized movement pattern with a path of least resistance, least pain involved with it. Neuromuscular dysfunction, any changing in individual constraints. Again, that's the biggest one. You change a job, change a hobby, just doing different things that you're not used to. It could be positive or negative. And then perceptual constraints, environmental, occupation, adaptations, purpose, goal, whatever task is involved, your task constraints. And then a socio-cultural, which is basically whatever your society, whatever your culture promotes, is going to lead to whatever constraints, again, positive or negative, that could lead to motor development. And then for older adulthood, we have, again, path of least resistance, any changes associated to age. So any, maturation, growth, physical decay, all that stuff is going to attribute to it. Pain management, safety concerns is the biggest one here for older adults. That's their main focus, and their gait will develop to anything involving safety. And then arthritic joint conditions, again, slower nerve conduction speed. The response time isn't as fast when you're older, right? And then perceptual constraints we have is the social, cultural, psychological, and environmental. So the biggest one here is psychological. Again, their gait is determined by their restrictions physically and whatever else their environment has for them. Now we're going to be talking about major changes in gait related to each stage of development. So first, we're going to be talking about early childhood. Let's start this video here. We could see the child here. It's obviously a lot shorter stride lengths than a more normal mature gait. We see a high cadence of quick, small steps, rapid steps. We see more of a flat foot contact instead of a heel strike present. We see like that prolonged double support phase mentioned earlier. You can see it's more just step instead of swinging toe off, heel striking. And then we have a widened basis support, so more of a various bow-legged stance. All right, and then childhood, you can see this cute little girl. Let me turn this music down. It's the basis support, so you see when she's in neutral position, you can see she's a various bow-legged stance, but when she's moving, locomotion, you can see her balance shifts and it goes more of a valgus, knock-knee position. We have an arm swing here. It's more of a high guard to low guard. She kind of does a little bit of both throughout. And then her initial contact, loading response, forefoot, it's plantar flex. It's more tippy toe, less heel strike, right? Mid stance, there's a lack of a toe off, foot lifts off, all off at once off the ground. And then terminal stance is lack of ankle dorsiflexion, pre-swing, initial swing, it happens simultaneously. Really hard to distinguish between them. Initial swing, mid-swing, we have acceleration there. It's present, but the high foot acts more for stability than mobility again. And then the late mid-swing to terminal swing. There's less propulsion than a mature gait, but there is control of deceleration, even though it is less than that of a mature gait as well. All right, and then into adulthood, or a normal gait should look like. Let me turn the music down here. It's this, obviously, again, the things we look for here is a stability in stance, sufficient foot clearance during a swing. The initial contact loading response will begin with a heel strike, then a flat foot. Mid stance should be a flat foot, contralateral toe off. Terminal stance will be like as you see there, initiation of toe off, contralateral foot strike will be present in the terminal stance. Initial swing, mid swing, toe off is contralateral. Late mid swing, terminal swing is control of deceleration, heel strike, and contralateral toe off here. And then for older adulthood, I'm going to play this and fast forward. You can see she has a decrease of balance and stability, a lot shorter stride lengths. Here is all about her safety. Her gait is all determined by extrinsic safety factors, like I was saying earlier. There's no pelvic torso rotation. There's very minimal ankle mobility. A lot of slow and short steps here. So kind of going back to early childhood, but with a little bit of a different twist. Okay. And that's all we have.